Hello, welcome to Board Game Bonkers. I'm JC. Today we're going to take a look at Architects of the West Kingdom. It's a worker placement game where we'll be placing worker, gathering resources to build buildings, getting apprentices to help with that, and going up a couple of tracks, the Guildhall to the Cathedral, to build a cathedral as well, to give us more points and benefits, as well as we'll be able to capture our opponent workers and send them to the guardhouse in prison. And we'll also be able to access a black market. And we've also got a furniture track to keep an order. So let's head down to the table, have a look and see how it plays. I'll then come back up top, let you know my thoughts, my positives, my negatives, what I don't like and what I can see others not like, and then give the game a final score out of 10. Now, I'm going to be careful, I'm not going to cover all the rules in this game in my overview, just give you a bit of a flavour. So let's head into the table and see how it plays. In Architects of the West Kingdom, each player will start with a player board. This is just an example. This is your player board. Here's where you'll be capturing your workers. I'll explain how that works later. This tells you the end game scoring points, as well as gaining points from building buildings, which are here. And you need apprentices to do that, or by going up the track in the cathedral, which is here. I'll explain how all that works a little bit later. You have two different sides. And there's some asymmetric abilities, or you can play just the standard. So I recommend starting with this. Each player will also have 3 different building cards. So these are drafted at the start of the game. And the first player will start with 3 silver. The next player will start with 4. Got the setup with 2 players. And each player will start with a maximum of 20 workers. I've got the resources set aside here. If you ever run out of resources, this is not all of them. I've only got some out. You'll use multipliers. If you ever run out of resources, there's an unlimited supply. Now we're going to zoom in just a moment to show you how this functions. It is a worker placement game. So as I said, down in the right here, you've got apprentices that you'll be gathering. They'll help you build buildings. I'll explain how all that works in a moment. We've got the black market here. I'll explain later how that works. We've got the guardhouse. We'll be sending opponent workers to the guardhouse. I'll explain how that works later. And we've got the different worker placement spots here. We've got the tax stand. I'll explain how that works later. We've got the cathedral and the Guildhall. You'll be placing workers here in the Guildhall to build buildings, or go up the track in the cathedral. It's essentially building the cathedral, which will give you a bonus. So let's zoom in and have a look at how the worker placement spots function. Okay, so as you can see, in the silversmith, any large spaces can have any number of workers, including opponent workers. So in the silversmith, you will gain 1 silver plus an extra 1 per worker. So for example, as an action, you'll be placing workers on worker placement spots. So let's just say I go here as a yellow player. I will gain 1 silver, and I'll gain an additional 1 for each worker I've got. In this case, it would be 3 silver that would take from the main supply. In the forest, it's 1 wood per worker in this case. If it was a purple player's turn and they place a worker here, they've got 2 workers there, they'll gain 2 wood. In the quarry, it's the same function. For each worker you've got there, you will gain some stone. In the mines work very similar. So let's just zoom up into the mines. So up in the mines here, it works very similar. So you will either gain some clay, so 1 clay plus an extra 1 per worker you've got there, or you can gain 1 gold for each 2 workers. Now, just to be clear, if you were to place an additional worker there, for example, and I've got 3 and I chose to get gold, take the 1 gold because I've got a minimum of 2 workers there, I cannot split this and use my other worker to take this action. It's either or. As you can see, you can only choose 1 of them. Now that's a little bit different when we actually go down and have a look at the King's Storehouse. So in the King's Storehouse, as you can see, we've got 1 action per worker. That means I can split them. So I've got 2 workers here. If I was to place another additional worker here, I've got 3. So for example, I could exchange these goods in any combination for a virtue. This is a virtue track, which is on the left. I'll explain that in just a moment. Or I can exchange any one of these goods in any combination to gain this marble good. Now let's have a look at the other worker placement spots. We've got the town centre here, and it turns out this is where you'll capture workers. Now the way capturing workers works is, for every worker I've got here, I can spend a silver to capture any group of the same type of workers from any worker placement spot. So for example, if we have a look up here, I could even recall my own workers and take them back and place them onto my player board. Or let's just say in a later turn that the purple player had additional workers here, I could capture all of these workers for 1 silver and I will place them onto my player board, which will go in here. Then at a later time, I can then put them into the guardhouse. I'll show you how that works. So with my captured workers that I've rounded up here on my player board, what the purple player can do, they can place a worker here, and as I've got 3, I can split these up. So as an action, I can take all of the workers I've captured, and I can place them into the guardhouse. I will then gain 1 silver for each worker I've placed in the guardhouse. Now, this one here is that the opponent can then capture and gather those, take those out of the guardhouse, for example. As a yellow player, they may, for example, on their turn, place a worker down to take their workers back. That's this action here. They'll just place them onto the player board to use another time. This one here is you'll be able to spend either 5 silver, and I'll explain why they're in different colours in just a moment, or you can discard, take a deck card, which is here, and lose a foot shoe, a deck card. You will lose points at the end of the game. You've still got this. However, you can actually get rid of it. I'll explain that in a moment. You'll then gather all your workers that opponent has got on their player board. So if it looked like something like this, you could capture them back. This bottom one is you'll pay 6 silver to resolve this. You'll simply turn it over and you will gain the foot shoe. I'll show you the foot shoe track in just a moment. And that's how the guardhouse works. So let's have a quick look at the black market. In the black market, you have 3 spaces here. They're smaller. That means that only one particular worker can go there. For example, the yellow player went here. They will be able to carry that action out. So what do they do? Well, you'll be able to take 1 silver, but you'll lose a foot shoe. And the foot shoe track is on the left here. I'll go through that in just a moment. And you also gain the resources here. You'll take those resources and then you'll draw a new card that will go to the top. In this middle space, you will gain 2 silver and lose 1 foot shoe. And then you could either take an apprentice, or you can have a look at 5 building cards, draw 5 and take one. This one you will gain 3 silver and lose a foot shoe. However, you'll gain the resources here. Now, once all those spaces are taken, so in a later time that these spaces are taken, you'll reset the market. All that means is you'll flick this card over and a new card will come in. Now let's have a look at the foot shoe track and explain how that works. So as you can see, we start at number 7. Now you will gain and lose foot shoe, and some apprentices will lose your foot shoe or gain your foot shoe. And I'll explain how that works in just a moment. So when you gain or lose foot shoe, go up and down the track, you either lose points or you'll gain points. Now these markers here mean that this one means you cannot place any workers into the guild hall. The guild hall is really important because you need that to build buildings or go at the track in the cathedral. This one here means they can't use the black market, which is here. Now let's have a look at the guild hall before we have a look at apprentices and buildings. So what you'll be doing is when you're ready to build, you'll be placing workers in the guild hall. And as you can see, there's different spaces for up to 2 players, then up to 3, and then up to 4, and up to 5 players. So you'll be filling the top row first before you move to the next row. Then whenever you hit these spots, that means that the black market will be reset. So as I explained earlier, you'll flick one of these over and there'll be new goods available. Now, what you'll be doing is once you've done that, you have a choice to build the building or to go up the cathedral. So let's have a look at buildings. So let's just say I've got these buildings in my hand. I'm going to have a look at the resources I need to build the building. And I'm going to look at the apprentices I need. So this tells me the apprentices I need. So if I look at the apprentices here, you've got different symbols, and you must have the required apprentices in order to build this building and the resources. And as soon as you build the building, you will gain the ongoing benefit, the benefit that is here. I'm not going to go through all of these. This one means it's an instant benefit, anything that's above. So for example, this one will give you foot shoes. You've got the foot shoe track once. This one means that it's end game scoring points. So this one here, for example, end game, so you get one victory point per 4th virtue that you've gone up in the track, so that's really handy. So they all do different things. And what you're trying to do is build those buildings, and they'll give you points as the points are stipulated in the top right of the card. Another option is you can go up the cathedrals. All you do is I'll place a worker here and I'll go up the cathedral. Now, as you can see, the spaces get shorter and you get more points. So it's a bit of a race. Now I will pay the resources. Okay, so discard a building card that I've got. You can have a maximum of 6 building cards and 5 apprentices in your hand. And then I will discard a gold, gain 2 victory points, and I'll take one of these cards. These cards will give you benefits. For example, that give 2 virtue. And that's how that works. So let's have a look more on the apprentices and the worker placement there. So as you can see, we've got the workshop here. Now, for every worker if I place there, I'm going to spend 4 silver, and I will then gain 1 of these apprentices. Now, it's important to state that the number of apprentices I get, the one I can get, depends on how many workers I've got there. So I've got 1 worker, which means I can only take from the first row for each column. So for example, that stipulates 1, so I could either take this one or this one. If I place more workers there in a future turn, so for example, if I place another one there, I've got 2, so therefore I can take either one of these or there. I must stick with the 1 row. I can't kind of mix and match. Now I can, as an option, is I can spend a silver and I can place it onto a card to skip that apprentice to move to the next one. So in this scenario, I miss 1, and I count from 1, 2, so therefore I can take any of these 2. What I can't do is try and bypass the other one by going up this one. So I have to stick with this one, and then I can take this one, for example, even though I've only got 2, I've left the silver. And what that means is in future turns, another player may be able to take that silver if they take that card. So you're trying to figure out which ones you need and how many you need to be able to build buildings by matching the symbols with the buildings, as I explained earlier. Now, it's important to note some will give you immediate benefits. For example, anything with a symbol means you'll get this either gain or lose this benefit. So this is losing 1 virtue. However, it will give you an ability for the rest of the game. I'm not going to go through all of those. The rulebook does a good job of showing you what all the apprentices do. And this is essentially how you play the game. The one thing I want to just go through is the tax stand that I have not explained. Now you'll notice there are different colours here. The ones that look more like orange bronze, anything like that, the silver will actually go to the tax stand and the remaining 2 silver will go to the main supply. Now you can go to the tax stand as an option, however you'll lose 2 virtue, but you'll gain all the silver that's there. So it's a good way of gaining extra silver. And players will keep doing so until all the spaces are filled up here in the guild hall, and whoever has the most points is the winner. So there we have it, Architects of the West Kingdom. Now I didn't explain all the rules. One I didn't explain, which is the black market resetting. So when you reset the black market, any workers you've got there at black market, they'll go to the guardhouse, which essentially is prison. So let's start off with my positives, what I like about the game, and what I can see others liking. The first thing is a worker placement. Now you start with 20 workers, which is great. You've got lots of options and choice. The large circles, you can place any number of workers there, and opponents can go there as well. So you've got lots of options, and you're getting a bit of an engine going. The more workers you've got there, the more resources you gather, or the more resources you'll be able to exchange into virtue, for example. So I really like that you can get that engine going, be able to be careful, because if you've got too many workers, the opponents will see. So they might think, well, do you know what? I'm going to go to the town centre to catch workers, place them on my board, and then send them to the guardhouse. So you've got to be careful with that. But I like you've got a lot of choice and options. The second thing I like is the apprentices. I like the choice you've got. So you've got 8 apprentices lying down, and you can obviously have a bit of a strategy by working out, okay, the more workers I've got there, I can go up the row and then try and obviously avoid the first couple of cards, because I need to get the card that is at the end of the row, which is the 4th one along. And you can use silver as part of your strategy to skip a card. So I really like that. You have to be careful, because the more silver it builds up, it gives you an incentive for the opponent to take that card and take the silver that's on it as well. So I really like that strategy. And I like that the abilities they give you, some of them are quite similar. Some give you an immediate benefit, some lose you virtue, and some gain you virtue, and some will give you, ongoing benefit. which is great. So you can start building up a bit of an engine with these apprentices, but they help you as well to build buildings because you need them for the type of apprentice to build your buildings. So as you can see, certain buildings need certain types of apprentices. So I really like the options you've got, and you've got a bit of a choice in what apprentices you want. So when it comes to the next positive, and that is how streamlined it is and simple process in building your buildings. You see, I need just the type of apprentice that's there indicated in the resources. I need, I discard that and I'll get the points, and I'll also get any immediate or end game scoring. In this case, I will get 4 virtue per gold that I've got. So that's really good. So I like that you can get build these quite simple and straightforward. You go to the guild hall, you have to lose a worker and to place into the guild hall to be able to build a building, but it's streamlined and simple. So the other positive I want to talk about is the tax, not the tax stand. Yes, we'll talk about the tax stand first. And so I really like that certain spots you go to, you have to pay silver. Some silver will go to the tax stand. You can go to the tax stand as an option, but you lose 2 virtue, but you can gain all the silver that's there. So it's a really viable strategy to use. So I really like that option in the game. I think it works well and it's really simple. Almost reminds me of Monopoly. People used to twist the rules in the free park and you'd get all the money. Almost feels like a bit like that. So then the other positive I want to talk about is black market. I really like how that works. Now, it's very effective early on in the game and it's much less effective at the end of the game. I'll come into one of my negatives later. But I really like that. It can give you some really good resources quickly. You can get extra building cards quickly. You can get an apprentice. You can get silver as well. So not only are you getting silver, you're getting the goods as well. So I think it's great that you've got lots of options there. Do I want these goods? Because I really need these resources really quickly. So it's a good shortcut as part of your strategy, but you got to be careful because you get to manage that virtue track because you lose virtue as you use the black market. That was to come on to my next positive, the virtue track. I actually like how this works because as part of your strategy, you're figuring out, do I go up there? Because I need to be careful that I don't lose the ability to place workers there, because if you're losing virtue, that will eventually stop you when you get to, I think it's there, we're going to number 4, then you lose 3 victory points, but also you'll be prevented from placing any workers in the guild hall. It stops you building buildings, and it stops you going up the cathedral track. So I really like how that virtue track works. I think they've done a really good job to tie all of that in. So I want to now finish off with one other positive, and that's artwork. I really like how the artwork is. It pops out. I think they've done a fantastic job. Aside from the guild hall and the cathedral, because I'll come into my negatives, and perhaps the player board's a little bit bland, I'll come into my negatives later. But I think everything else, the iconography is clear, the symbols are clear. I think they've done a good job with the artwork, and I think it looks lovely on the board, aside from the cathedral and the guild hall. But everything else, I think they've done a good job. So thumbs up from me in that. So let's talk about the negatives. Let's talk about the things I can see others not liking. Now, the first thing is I want to talk about that worker placement element, but more about the capture of workers. Now, you can capture your and recall your own workers, which is great. I think that's fantastic. But it feels a little bit disjointed. It feels a little bit more of a nuisance, and it might be too much of a negative take that where the opponent can capture all of your workers and place them on their player board to then send to the guardhouse later. They'll then gain silver for doing that. And it just felt more of a pain in the backside because you're going to the guild hall looking at all the options, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 options. Okay, what did they all do again? You're trying to remember that. After a few games, you do remember, but it's a little bit annoying because you're going through the rule book to do that. Look at, like, what does that do again? But it felt more of an annoyance. Oh, I now need to get my workers back from there, but I can also get them from the player board as well when they do that. It can add to the strategy, yes, but it felt to me a little bit less smoother in terms of the rest of the gameplay, and it just felt more of an annoyance than a good thing. It's more, so some people may feel that too much of a take that negative, but your workers all going to prison, and then you're going to have to waste an action to get them back, and perhaps waste resources to get them back as well. So it just feels not smooth as the others. So the next negative I want to touch on, and I did mention my positive about the artwork being good, and it is, but the guild hall and the cathedral artwork is rather boring and dull. And the Guildhall, which I'll come to more detail in just a second, just looks like a graveyard, and the cathedral looks more of a dialect building, and the cathedral one doesn't feel like I'm building anything. So I think artistically they could have made that a lot better. Perhaps they could have put building pieces and blocks in the cathedral, and perhaps it could have made the Guildhall look like a Guildhall rather than a graveyard. So I've got a bit of a problem with that. It just aesthetically doesn't look pleasing on the eye. And the artwork in the player board's background is a little bit dull. Could have made that a little bit more engaging. But let's move on to my next negative and focus specifically on the Guildhall. I feel like I'm placing workers, and I understand you need a worker to work in a building. It completely makes sense thematically, but I feel like I'm putting them in a graveyard. And I feel like it just takes away from that thematic sense for me, that sure, they have to have a track to keep track of how many workers are there and when the in-game trigger is, because obviously when you've filled all the spaces up, then the in-game trigger happens. But they could have made it look a lot nicer. They could have made it look like a guild hall and made it a little bit more inspiring. It's just downright dull and boring. So I now want to move on to my next negative, and it's certainly linking in with this art, what design, and how this makes you feel thematically. The cathedral. Now I'm going up a track, and now you're strategically working out, right, how far to go up that track, because I need to get points from buildings. But certainly you're getting more points from buildings. So it takes me 5 spaces to get up to the top of the cathedral and get me 20 points. Bear in mind, each time I'm going up, I lose a building card. I lose resources, but I'm gaining resources because I'll flip one of these cards over. It might give me virtue, or it may give me a combination of virtue and resources. Now, the buildings, when you're building them, yes, it uses resources, but I can build 3 buildings to equate to around 20 points or so. That's 3 workers, but it's cost me 5 workers to go to the cathedral at the top to get me roughly the same number of points. So mathematically, you're better building buildings if you can. And that's a much better viable option than I've seen than others using the cathedral. So that's just something to keep in mind. I felt that was more of a tack-on added element to the game. The cathedral felt like an afterthought rather than during the production, and it's uninspiring. At least they could have made more of an attempt to feel like you're building a cathedral. So I felt that wasn't as thematic as strong as the rest of the game. It felt uninspiring, uneventful, and it wasn't as incentive as building buildings. I would have liked that the scoring, certainly early on, was more powerful. For example, the first spot's 2 points, that's nothing. Next spot, 4 points, that's nothing. So you're much more powerful and beneficial building buildings. So the general feel of the game, I want to give my general thoughts of the game. Now, I did discuss obviously about the black market. It's great at the start, but it fades away at the end of the game. It's a little bit not useful, because you have to bear in mind and keep an eye on that virtue track, because if you go down too far, then you're going to be prevented from going to the Guildhall. Now, the general feel of the game is smooth and fairly smooth, but it feels to Gardeners a little bit of an annoyance, and it feels like the Guildhall and the cathedral is more, the cathedral especially is a bit of an added on element. It just feels as an afterthought to that, and it feels that they could have made more of an effort. But it's certainly got a bit of crunchiness for such a medium midweight game, and it's certainly got a bit of thinkiness and strategy to it. And although you're focusing on more or less the same thing, all players are, and you can do it in different combinations, the black market's a great addition. I think that works well. And I like that flexibility that you've got in the game, but you have to be careful and balance that out with your virtue you're gaining or losing. And my worker's been captured and sent to the guardhouse. I didn't like that part of the game though, and that was a bit of a negative for me. But overall, this is a solid Euro worker placement game. I think a lot of players will get a lot of enjoyment out of, and I'm struggling to rate this and give this a final score. But I think I'm going to come in at a 6.5. I didn't get the excitement and that fun factor as other players, and it just felt a little bit less inspiring as others in the series, like Raiders of the North Sea, where I feel that's a lot smoother and more exciting for me. And I felt that in this particular game, there was more of added on elements of afterthoughts that went into the game rather than feeling integrated fully. For example, the cathedral felt certainly like a added on element. So for me, I'm sticking with a 6.5. I can see why a lot of people enjoy and love this game, and I can appreciate it for what it's doing. It just wasn't a game that I was enamored by, inspired by, and it just fell flat for me. But I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and I certainly would recommend giving it a go because there is a lot of depth for such a mid-weight game. So check it out. That's Architects of the West Kingdom. Now, if you're enjoying content like this, please do consider subscribing to the channel and giving our videos a thumbs up. It's free to do, doesn't cost you anything. And let us know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts in this game compared to the others in the series? Do you like this game? I mean, what do you like about it and what don't you like about it? Let us know in the comments down below. Until next time, take care.